Paltrocast.
Steve, I believe you're dialing in from Detroit today. How's your day going aside from talking to fake news media?
Fantastic. It's so great on this tour. This tour is like one of the funnest, easiest tours I've ever done. I'm with Satriani, and we've been buddies for 52 years, and we've toured together and recorded, but it was usually in a different kind of a format. But right now, it's just me and Joe, and we even recorded some new music, and it's just a great tour.
Well, we're going to come back to the Carl Place stuff. Dialing in from Long Beach, Long Island. We're going to come back to the Nassau County stuff later on. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way. So first,
All right.
We were connected because of the folks from Decades Rock Live. You did an excellent tribute to Terry Kath. Now, how much learning was needed for you to play those Terry Kath parts, or did you already know all that?
Well, I was a Chicago fan when I was a teenager in the 70s because their music was so good and it was always on the radio. I was more into heavier rock, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Deep Purple, Aerosmith, Kiss, that kind of thing. But Chicago was always there. And the songs were always, there's something enchanting in them. And Terry he was a powerhouse. He was like a force, he was visceral when he played. And I loved that. I gravitated more towards Hendrix and Page because they're more kind of crazier, with Hendrix with his sounds and whammy bar and all. But Terry was I think if he wasn't disguised in a band that was so good at creating accessible music, he might have been recognized as an instrumental great player. He was a great, recognized, but sometimes when the band overshadows the popularity. So when it came time when I was invited to do the Chicago gig, it really gave me an opportunity. I thought, you know what? I'm going to really dig into this band. And I listened to all their music again, and it was so nice. But I really was taken back by Terry and his prowess and just his command on the instrument. He would work up like a motor, and he would just start wailing, and very free and open and raw, because he played his guitar directly into an amp, maybe with a wah-wah or something. Not a lot of pops and whistles, but he made it just really scream and speak. So when it came time to learn the songs, I've already kind of decided that I can't be somebody else. I've been in many situations where I've taken over for a prominent player, and I do my best to honor the music by playing in the style of, but it's going to be me. So the Terry stuff was great because we're totally different kinds of players, and I was respectful of all of the historic melodies that he played and even some of his solo. But what I did kind of embrace was just his kind of ferocious attack on the instrument. So that was a lot of fun doing that gig. The guys in the band are just great. They're funny, they're wild, and they're just very talented, really talented. That gig, I was wearing inner ears, and inner ears, everybody wears them. I wear them. But the band sounded so good. I couldn't believe it. It was like better than any kind of radio or stereo or recording. Those horns, they were just perfectly in tune, and they just played great, and it was a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to seeing them at Jones Beach this summer like most summers. But hey, are you ready for compliments, or are you maxed out for the day?
Bring it on, brother. I never turn a compliment.
I loved the documentary that Alan Berry did on you, unofficial thing that's on YouTube. And I didn't know a lot of the stuff about you before watching it. Yes, the cat food. Okay, but that's not the point here. The point is that you basically bet on yourself from a young age. That when we talk about music industry visionaries, usually people go to other punk rock or hip hop. You know, you talk about your Ian MacKays or your Rick Rubins or that kind of thing, where the people knew, hey, keep the publishing, start your own label, have the brand and all that. But you were really young when it came to knowing to own your stuff. Who was
Mm.
the first person that really guided you to know, okay, don't take the bad deals, own my stuff, and I'm going to set myself up forever? Was it Zappa?
Yeah, Frank. One of the first conversations I had with him, I asked him for his advice on, uh, what advice would he give a young musician, because that's what you ask. And a lot of times when you ask a question like that, you get a lot of hype and philosophy. And Frank was nothing like any of that. The only thing he said was, keep your publishing. And I didn't even know what publishing was, So he gave me the number to his attorney, his publishing attorney, Jerry Rosenblatt, who to this day is still my publishing attorney.
Wow.
And I saved up a little money and I bought an hour of Jerry's time. And boy, oh boy, did he hit me to publishing, which is the best kept secret in the music business. It's publishing. And he set up all publishing companies, a publishing company for me all around the world, for administration. I mean, there's a whole infrastructure to it. But suffice to say, to this day, I still own every bit of my publishing because that's what Frank said. And trust me, that's what everybody wants. They want your publishing. And they dangle threats. Well, we're not going to sign you, or we're not going to let your music be in this or that unless we own the publishing. And I had no problem saying, okay, great, thanks, goodbye. And they every one of them inevitably say, well, wait. Okay, well, let's work something out. I said, there's nothing to work out. I own my publishing, the end. And that was, I made no exceptions. And it worked.
Well, back to the positivity. When you talked about how you always did things your way, but at the same time can do the tribute stuff, a lot of people are very excited about the Beat Tour that's coming up. Now, similar question to the Terry Kath thing. Did you have to actually learn how to play all that stuff? Or had you been listening so long, you kind of knew from muscle memory how to play most of those albums?
Well, I didn't sit around and play the King Crimson music. I listened to it intensely when I was younger. And those 80s records were just as brilliant as you can get, let me tell you. And I would listen to them. I knew all the songs. Most of them I heard on the radio because that music was very, oddly enough, it was intensely complex, but very accessible and radio friendly. So when Adrian asked me to, if I wanted to do it, I just absolutely. Now I knew
Mm-hmm.
about Robert. Obviously, I've been following Robert as long as I could remember, and I knew that there was something special about his technique, and I looked into it a little bit. We didn't have access to these kinds of things when we were younger, like YouTube and, where you can go, well, I wonder how Robert Fripp picks, and next thing you know, there it is, him giving you a lesson, So uh, I had been with Zappa when I was young. So I had, I had an interest in playing that high information type of stuff, uh, but when I looked under the hood,
Mm-hmm.
of all of this beat music, I was really surprised because it's so clever and Robert Fripp is so brilliant. It's just stunning to me. Him and Adrian, Adrian Belew, the things they did together are just fantastic. It scratched an itch that for me that nothing else did. And I have the book, there's a group of guys that transcribed those 3 records, luckily, because you can't really hear what they're doing because it's so. So the challenge for me is some of the stuff, a few things are very specific to Robert's style. And, you know, my goal, as it is with any of these kinds of situations I'm in, is to respect the music the best I can. But it's just inevitable that your sound is going to come out. I'm not very good at mimicking, you know. Some guys can do that. They can say, here's Alan Holdsworth, here's Eddie Van Halen, here's da 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 da. I don't really do that. I can take those things and work them into my style. Uh, I'm very thrilled to be playing a lot of, most of exactly what Robert played because it falls so beautifully on the guitar. But it's that picking thing that he does that's the real challenge, you know. So I'm working it out.
Well, the compliments are going to continue because if I look at the last 12 months, you had to learn Terry Kath stuff, you had to learn King Crimson stuff, and then you had to fully prepare for this tour with Joe. I think a lot of people kind of go, well, I learned my 15 songs for the next 3 years. So does that mean that you're playing a lot even in your off time?
Brother, I get to the gig at noon and I sit until the doors open working on this beat stuff. You know,
Wow.
it's different because I could listen to the Chicago stuff and play it without really even having to practice it. You know, I can hear it, I identify it, I know what to do. But this beat stuff is nothing like that. You got to handle this stuff with kid gloves.
Yeah. So what something that you just said about getting there at 12 and then practicing, I'm curious about how life on the road has changed for you because you were still a road dog, you're still selling out large venues all these decades later. And your first few tours, I'm sure it's kind of like I've got to live life to the fullest, see everything when I get to the town. I'm going to eat every food, try everything that I can do. And then after your 20th tour, you probably want to sleep a little bit, and then maybe the pendulum swings back. For you on the road these days, how much life is there outside of the venue and hotel room?
Well, actually, it was a little different for me in the beginning. I started touring when I was 20 with Zappa, and those tours were pretty brutal because we flew every day. There was no tour bus, and you're waking up at 9. You go right from the airport to the gig, and Frank would do sound checks as soon as you got there until the doors were open. So that's anywhere between 2 and 4 hours of Frank writing, teaching you, recording. We recorded everything. He recorded everything, and changing songs in the set. Plus, we had a repertoire of 80 songs, 60% of which were completely death-defying on the guitar. They should never be played on the guitar. And then, you get a 45-minute break, and then you go out and do a show, and then you take a 45-minute break and usually do a second show. And Frank would write the set list literally 5 minutes before we went on stage. And in all the 3 years of touring I did with him, the set was never the same twice. So by the time I get back home after the hotel, you're not going out sightseeing or anything. You don't see anything except what you see on the ride from the airport. And I'd have to go home and practice because I didn't know what songs he was going to call for the next night. And I had to make sure that I had them. So that after those tours, I just thought, I'm done. I don't like touring. I'm not doing that. I like turned yellow and got jaundice on my first tour. I didn't know how to eat or sleep. I was just completely disheartened by the touring. It was frightening to me. But then I joined Dave Roth's band, and that was very different. Now you got a tour bus. There's no sound checks. There's one show, and you just go crazy playing simple rock and roll. And that's when I really started to appreciate touring. And since then, I would always bring a bicycle with me, or I go jogging. And I just love touring. I love seeing the world. I still do. And every day I would go out and go jogging or go to the gym or take in the city and take in the people and the culture and the foods and everything. But sometimes when I'm on tour, like now, I have several projects that are just looming and they just require my attention. So there's no going around. Yesterday, I actually went out and went to a restaurant by myself because my wife had went home for a little while, and it was nice because I got to go outside and have a little time. But until I get these other obligations in my comfort zone, yeah, I'm kind of stuck in the backstage. That's all right though.
Again, thank you generously for your time here. A few questions, and then I'll let you go back to relearning beat. First, I know that Joe had a high school funk band called City Function, and the photo of him in that band is absolutely hilarious. Did you see City Function live, or you just knew him as Joe in high school?
Well, that disco band I never saw live. I was too young to get into the clubs.
Got it. So in that case, you just knew of the legend of Disco Joe.
I knew that I knew he because I started taking lessons when I was like 12. And all of us, all my friends that loved the guitar were going to Joe for lessons because he was about 3 or 4 years older and he was great. And when I heard he was doing that gig, I just figured, yeah, he's got a gig. He's it's a different thing, but he's with a band and he's playing. I didn't realize how much he just hated that whole thing.
That part I didn't realize. The next question here: when people talk about the great frontman that you played with, no one really ever talks about John Lydon and the fact that that's you on Rise. Have you ever played Rise live before?
No, that's a great that. Yeah, I was asked by Bill Laswell, who was producing that Lydon record, to come and do the guitars. And I did them very quick. I was on tour at the time with Alcatraz, and I could only fly into Electric Lady for 2 half days. And some of the guitars were done by Nicky Scopolidis. He did a great job on the record. But I came in and I just did all the crazy stuff. And then Lydon came in, and he was great. He listened to everything, and he just goes, "It's fucking great, man." You know. And then we hung out that night and went to dinner in a club and stuff. And he asked me if I wanted to tour with Pill. And as much as I would have loved to do that, at the time I was committed to another band, so I missed that opportunity. But I love that record. I had so much freedom, and it was just one of those little cake gigs that came along, little gift from the universe.
Yeah. The 85 to 88 output of yours is so unbelievably diverse, and that just kind of takes the cake. And the last question, speaking of the 85 to 88 era, the infamous Lucky Strike gig that didn't happen. More has been written about it than time you were actually spending there. One thing I'm curious about, we know what happened where you guys went, we're doing this, fire marshal gets called, doesn't happen. But after that happened, were there any tour offers or like serious levels of interest from anybody involved in that whole thing of getting the band out there?
There's been interest in that all the time since it ended. The Lucky Strike gig was actually, well, it wasn't a gig, it was a almost gig. And we were only going to play 3 songs, and at the last minute, I called Dave and I said, "Hey, you want to do this?" And he's like,
I'm starting to.
We were going to use that was something Billy and Greg were invited by the singer. Oh, damn.
Ralph from
Ralph. Yeah, Ralph. Sorry. And what's the band again? They're
Steel Panther?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. They're a lot of fun. And I said, sure, I'll come down and play. We were going to do like Yankee Rose and Shy Boy. And then I thought, you know what? Let's ask Dave. Why not? I didn't think he'd be interested, but he's like, sure, I'll come down. And, he came to the house and we reviewed. We just went through it a bit. And him and I drove down there. And when we got there, nobody knew Dave was going to be there. They just thought it was enough to have, Steve, Billy, and Greg. The line was, it was very thick and it went all the way around the building and the room was totally packed. They shoved like 1,200 people in a 300-seat venue. And there was a curtain on the stage. And I was standing behind the curtain and I was about to hit the opening chord to Yankee Rose. I was ready, and right when I was about to hit it, to have the curtain open and to start it, the guy comes to me and he says, you can't play. The fire marshal is here. There's too many people, and you'll get in trouble and they'll fine you. And I said, well, I'm playing. And he goes, you're going to get fined. I said, I'll pay the fine. How much is it? And he goes away and he comes back. It's $5,000. So I thought, all right, that's worth it, and I'm about to hit it. He goes, no, but then you'll go to jail, and the club owner will go to jail and they'll close the place. And I was like, and I just never hit the chord. And it was funny because I went back and I told Dave, I said, it's not happening. And he goes, perfect. Now we'll get more press out of this than if we played. And he was absolutely correct because it was on the front page of newspapers, and it went around the world, and that was much better than bad clips from iPhones on the internet of, so it worked really good. And even right after that, we again, we touched on, hey, should we do something? Can we do something? But, Dave was also dancing with Van Halen at the time. That was going in and out and in and out. And I never really, I liked and enjoyed my time with Dave a lot.
Sure.
But when I had moved on, I moved on.
But you kept the friendships intact. And I heard a wonderful story that you were at the Staples Center gig backstage and went up to Dave and the band and went, hey, you guys are not allowed to play the songs better than I can. And you were around. So I think it speaks volumes that you're able to keep up friendships for 30, 40 years, but not look for press around that whole thing, Steve.
Yeah, well, Dave was a special character in my life. He was intense and I learned so much from him. And I don't really have bad relationships with people. I refuse, and it can be difficult at times. I mean, there's people you choose not to hang around with, but Dave was always fun. He was always interested in doing something extraordinary like mountain climbing, rock climbing. He taught me how to work out, swim, run. We used to go running, bicycle riding. And we were friends, as much as I think that's possible with somebody as famous as that and, eccentric. But we just remained in touch, and occasionally there was quasi opportunities to do things. But we never actually got together again. It was just that very close call at the Lucky Strike.
And before I let you go, were you ever in Long Beach, Long Island, New York? Was that your beach if you were out here, or were you a Jones Beach person?
No, I was Jones Beach, but I was out to Long Beach quite a few times. Yeah, Long Beach was great. It was like way out, from Coral Place, but it was not. It was a nicer beach.
Well, Steve, thank you for the many decades of great art. Looking forward to everything to come, whether you are playing tribute, whether you are playing originals, whatever it is. Thank you for being you. And thank you to Decades Rock Live for making this happen.
Thank you so much, Darren. I'm looking real forward to the film, and thank you for the nice interview.
Paltrow.